This winter, I'm trying to keep my lotus plants alive so that hopefully they can produce their very first flower in the coming season. Now, the lotus plant can handle cold, but here in the Netherlands, frost is the real problem. And as you can see, winter is here. Now, instead of just trying a single method to overwinter my lotus, I'm trying 3 different ways, mainly as an experiment and to see which method can actually work here in my climate. To be honest, I don't know if any of the 3 methods will actually work, but I'm pretty confident that at least one of them has a high chance of succeeding. So today I'm going to show you all 3 methods and I'm going to give you my prediction with each one of them, how high of a chance I think they have of succeeding. Let's start with method number 1. So for the first method, we are talking about the lotus that was growing in the very center of my garden. Throughout the season, it had quite a decent growth, quite a number of leaves, and it looked overall fairly healthy. Now, you might have already seen these bags in a previous video where I already showed you that this is one of the methods that I'm trying to use to overwinter my lotus roots. You can rewatch that video if you want, of course, but in short, I dug out the roots of the lotus, I put them in a ziplock bag with some sandy soil and some moisture and then put them in the refrigerator. Now, this is normally a very valid way to store or even transport your lotus roots. However, out of the 3 methods, I still think this one has the least chance of succeeding. And I'd say around 10 to 20%. And the reason for that is that this is normally a great way of storage when you have thick lotus tubers. Now, tubers are a reserve or a storage of energy for the plant when it goes through a winter or a dormant period. However, if you're growing lotus from seed like I am, then the plant in the first year is mainly focusing on growing a root system and some leaves and not really storing energy just yet for a next season. And so my lotus roots at the moment are just very thin. And they don't really have the energy, I think, to survive a dormant period in a refrigerator, for example, and out of the soil. Now, I just looked inside of the bags and I could also see some mold forming, I'm guessing, so not really a good sign. And some of the roots are kind of shriveled and blackened. So like I've said, I don't think these have a very high chance of surviving, 10, 20%, maybe even less the way things are looking right now. But I still wanted to try this method and see if I could pull it off. Don't think it's gonna work. All right, off to method number 2. All right, sorry for the poor lighting, but another valid way of storing or overwintering your lotus, especially if you're growing it in a container, is by simply moving the entire container to a frost-free place, such as a garage or a cellar. Now, for method 2, we are talking about the lotus that I grew here at home in this mini tub or this large bowl. And out of the 3 lotus plants, this one had the least growth throughout the last season. It remained fairly small, but nevertheless it created quite some leaves, especially at the end of summer. Now, in comparison to the other 2 tubs, which are just too big and too heavy to safely move around, I can just pick up this bowl and put it down here in the cellar. So what I did is I cut off all the stems. I put a small layer of water on top of there, about a few inches. And out of the 3 methods or projects, I think this one has the highest chance of success and surviving. I'd say around 80%. Why not 100? Well, something can still happen to the roots. They could, for example, start to rot, and something I don't really have control of. But the temperature here in the cellar is relatively constant, around 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. And all I gotta do is make sure that this bowl doesn't dry out. So that's why I think this one has the highest chance of success and making it till next spring. All right, off to method number 3. And for the third method, we are back in the garden and we have to get inside of the greenhouse. Thank goodness. All right, we are inside of the greenhouse, inside of the dome. And even though it's snowy and -1 degree Celsius right now outside, in here it's actually fairly nice and mild. Now, as a reference, the last 2 weeks it has been freezing. So during the day it has been around 0 to -2 degrees Celsius, while during the nights it has been around -3 to -4 degrees Celsius. This is a purely passive solar heated greenhouse. So it has some insulation, it has some thermal mass, but it has no heating setup whatsoever. So no compost heating, no electric heating, and no burning of fuel. Only the heat of the sun. Now we've had some sunny days, which is fortunate because even though outside it was around freezing temperatures, inside it could get around 18 to even 20 degrees Celsius, and that of course helped heating up the thermal mass and kept the inside of the greenhouse fairly mild. Now, about this Lotus inside of the greenhouse. Out of the 3 tubs, this one has shown the most growth in the last season. That is of course because it was inside of the dome, it was very warm in here, and that really helped it grow strong. Much like the first tub, this one was very heavy to move around, and I didn't want to dig out the roots and potentially damage them, so I wanted to try to let it survive inside of the greenhouse. Now, I've recently increased the height of the grow bed here inside of the dome. I've added a lot of thermal mass, and I completely dug in the Lotus tub so that hopefully it would be as protected as it could be. As you can see, I've also added some bubble wrap on top of the tub just as an extra layer of protection and to keep the frost out. And as you might have seen recently in a short, this has been successful so far. All right, let me get the bubble wrap plastic off of the tub so you can see. There we go. All right, so I've just removed the bubble wrap plastic on top, and as you can see, this water is still very liquid, so that is good. I've also added a compost thermometer in the soil right next to it, and it has been ranging between 5 to 8 degrees Celsius, so that is very good. And this one has stayed frost-free up until now. Now, my prediction of success with this particular tub, I think, is around 50 to 60%. Why? Well, so far this setup has been very successful and it has kept the tub frost-free. But if the winter proves to be longer and harsher, then I think this one could be in trouble, because eventually the temperatures inside of the greenhouse and inside of the soil will drop down to potentially freezing temperatures. And like I said, I think this one could be in trouble. But so far so good. I'm hoping for a lot of sunny winter days, so that will keep this the inside of the greenhouse fairly warm and keep this one frost-free. And out of the 3 tubs, I'm really hoping that this one will survive the winter, because this plant has been the strongest out of the 3, and I'm also guessing that this one has the biggest chance of a flower next season, so fingers crossed. So come next spring or early summer, we'll see which method was eventually the most successful, and of course by that time I will make another video about the results. So that is my prediction for the different ways in which I'm trying to overwinter my Lotus. But I am curious, what method would you place your bet on? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.